I'm uh, was formerly in the Marine Corps and entered college and got my Bachelor of Science Electrical Engineering, and then spent 13 years designing and developing, primarily in the communications industry in Silicon Valley. And so, in the early 2000s, I left engineering and went into psychology. I had an awakening experience, so to speak, in 2007. So I took a 10-year break, came back in 2018, and instead of clinical psychology, I was studying cognitive neuroscience, which was a new enough field that it wasn't discussed in graduate studies in 2007. So I initially started down the road of psychology to figure out how to increase performance because as startup engineers, we spend all our time working. And and then I developed what I would say insight into the human condition. And Mariah and I have been talking for about 12 years now.
13.
13. Okay. January of 2012.
Yeah, January of 2012. Yes.
Yeah. So we've been talking a long time about this and other subjects, but um, my primary focus now is is consciousness or first person representation, and how I can my son just texted me so I get interrupted. Uh, how I can work my magic into and insight into the human condition, um, into the field of AI, and create um, maybe what we could call responsible AI. And so Mariah and I have been talking about a number of different issues, and then this crops up, and and he's seen and studied the subject, and I'm experiencing this fall into autocracy, um, in ways that I hadn't imagined possible, because I couldn't have imagined that any group of tens of millions of people would put somebody in office um, that would really get his hands on all the levers of power in a really wrong way. And so we
You mean
started
a
out.
criminal? You mean a criminal?
Yeah.
Yes, yes. Um, he's an absolute criminal and on so many levels, and he's gotten away with a lot because he's grown up rich. So so since my background in psychology and cognitive neuroscience is so deep, um, I figured that maybe Mariah could describe what's happening from an historical perspective, and then I can discuss what different techniques, different things that we're experiencing, um, why things are the way they are, which helps people withstand the onslaught of absolutely nonsensical actions. Um, and the term coined that I like the best is the cruelty is the point.
Yeah.
And when I
Said that.
jumped in, Rolande was talking about the level of cruelty she's witnessed. And so that's where I feel like Mariah and I, being academic types, are really fortunate to have you and Cecilia here to discuss how to deal with the magnitude of what's happening, how to be involved, and how not to let the offense of what these small-minded individuals in charge are creating, to provoke people into violence or other things. They give the power structure another reason to commandeer law enforcement and the military against its own citizens.
So let me just take a moment to catch both of you up, since you're new here. to what we did in the previous two videos. The first video was about moral responsibility. And what we did in that video was adjust the language of our current situation. Yes, we're talking about criminality. Yes, we're talking about cruelty, but fundamentally, we're labeling the Trump administration as evil because it deserves that label.
Correct.
Whenever an administration, whenever a government hurts innocent people and does harm to them without due process, that's evil.
Correct.
And that
Well,
language gives us moral responsibility and moral courage.
we need to come up with I'll be quiet. You finish what you're going to say because you have another video.
Yeah, so the second
I'll say
video
something.
is on the authoritarian mindset and how that translates from a way of thinking into government policy. So the way of thinking is a rigid way of thinking in which the authoritarian is protecting you, the individual and society, from the forces of destruction measured by disgust. So whether it translates into food, paintings, movies, novels, gender, everything in our lives can be characterized by a hierarchy of healthy to disgusting. And the authoritarian mindset is sensitive to disgust and wants to use the government to protect us through violence from disgusting elements of society. That creates fascism right there. So those are the first two videos. And so what we want to talk with both of you in this video about how to maintain moral outrage and not get exhausted from that outrage. And secondly, how to adopt the tactics of a peaceful warrior. Someone who knows how to fight the good fight, but at the same time maintain health and equilibrium in your own life. So I'll stop there.
So I just wanted to jump in real quick and say that I'm still amazed at how many people do get out and protest, because as an engineer in Silicon Valley, all I did is have my head down, trying to innovate. And that took most of my waking hours. And so I really wasn't, I mean, I was listening to news, corporate news, and listening to headlines. So it was a little bit better than it is now. But however, um, I had no idea. I just noticed that politics seemed to drive the country in the wrong way, decade by decade. And so, but because of my career and my focus and maybe also family, I never did feel the urge to get out there and march. I've been the closest. I did show up to one Wall Street 99 protest, and I'm much closer to going out. But I'm also more of an academic type. It's just that I feel like I have real insight into how the mind works and how we get off balance. And then people like you guys actually understand how that works in practice. And
So my
and
question to you, oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead. I'm good.
My question to you, John, is how could you not? I'm academic as well. I'm not to the point that what you guys have done. And I've been a teacher for 45 years. I'm retired now. How could you not? How could you not get in the streets? I took my kids in the streets with me as children, as babies, in carriages and as little kids, and all the way up and through their teen years, and some of my grandkids. So I guess that's my question. How could people not be in the street all this time? All 50, how many years what's that I figured out? 58 years of being out in the streets since I was 17. I don't know how you could not. There's been so many things going on. This one in particular, of course, I want to make Mother a comment too about what you said, Mariah. He couldn't be the president if 78 million people didn't vote for him. He couldn't have been the president in 2016 if those 71 million didn't vote for him. So there's a problem with the people who vote for him. Of course he's evil. Of course the administration is evil. We have to understand, not get along with him, but understand what is the criteria for all of those people. And I will tell you, in my interaction, because I've been forced to interact with them specifically when we're in the streets and they come at us, the Trumpers come at us, they are as evil as he is.
Right.
They believe with their whole hearts what they're doing. Like I said, when I gave the example of the house that I went to that was hit by ice, they didn't care. And when I dealt with the ICE people just last Thursday night, I think it was Thursday. Yeah, when we were in front of the ICE Thursday night, those ICE people don't care. They're on a mission. So yeah, we can get rid of Trump and we can get rid of Trump's administration. How do we get rid of the Trumpers? Until we can get rid of the Trumpers and what they're doing, I don't know how we go forward.
That's a very good point, Roland. I'm one of those kids that went along with my parents. My parents were very active with elections and voting rights and so on. And I've been I've been protesting along. Our form of protest was to vote, was to get the vote out, to work elections, which we did for decades in my family, decades. I'm still working elections. I'm now an inspector, and I've been doing elections for the last 13 years religiously since I retired. But anyway, I want to go back a little bit. I also want to say that from the beginning of my career, of my college career, I feel like I'm not particularly a scientific mind, but I'm not a slouch either. You know, I was a teacher for a while, and I retired
Cecilia,
after.
could you pause for a second? So I want to go into both of your backgrounds, but we need to introduce you as well.
I'm getting there, Mariah.
Yes.
What I'm about to say is that I'm retired after about 36 years of being in public service.
Okay.
And all of my career has been in public service. I retired from Pima County government, Pima County wastewater. I have been doing public service work my entire life. I have never worked for a public entity, and my political career, well, it's not a career, but my political work started all the way back with Cesar Chavez when I was boycotting grapes and marching on behalf of the farm workers and boycotting lettuce, and in Tucson at least marching to keep our parks and our golf courses on the south side and for Hispanics, keeping them open for us. Anyway, I have been on the political side, on the thinking side, on the planning side, the Democratic Party side, and also on the ground, marching and pushing the banners and putting our posters in their front yards, etc. All of that to say that I'm pretty pissed off right now. I'm pretty pissed off because it just doesn't seem like any of that is working today. I don't know what we can make work. We've got so many millennials and Gen Zs and Gen something or others that don't much care about what's going on. I don't know what it's going to take to get more people interested in pushing our party, the Democratic Party, at the top to start doing more. My major complaint is that the Democratic Party at the very top, and I don't know who controls it, who's in charge of it, but they've been asleep for the last 20, 30 years. They've been sound asleep. The Republican Party has been planning their 2025 plan. They've been planning that for decades.
Absolutely.
And where has the Democratic Party been? Where
They've
have
always looked at the office. They always looked at the larger. They were always looking at the presidency, the president, and those in Congress. They weren't looking at the locals. That's the thing that that the ball got dropped, because while they were doing that, the Republicans were making sure who got into the school boards, who got into the state legislatures, and they were doing that state by state by state, what judges could get appointed. They were very systematic in what they were doing. And it started with Clinton. It started under, I'm sorry?
They had a 50-year plan. We had nothing. They had a 50-year plan. And
yeah,
they
I know.
worked it. They worked it. And where
That's
was
right.
our party? Where was
I
our
just
party?
said, well, I
Okay, so I want to step in here for a second. Cecilia, are you finished with your introduction?
Pretty much.
Okay.
I'm
Rolande,
currently-
introduce yourself,
just to
please.
let you know, I'm currently retired.
Okay.
And I have little jobs. I work from home. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Rolande, go ahead.
So, I've lived in many places here in the States. I grew up until I was 17 in New York, and then I moved with my family to Indianapolis, Indiana. Then I went to college in Terre Haute, and then I met my now husband. He was from Chicago, and I lived in Chicago for a while, and then I came to Tucson. So that's my places where I've lived. When I was 17 and I was in East Aurora, New York, it was during the Vietnam War, and we were very involved, my high school and a priest, his name was Father Kelly, in going against what was going on with the Vietnam War. So my very first jump into protesting was when I was 17. We went on a quote field trip with Father Kelly to the Marine Corps recruitment center in downtown Buffalo. And we had a chain link that we put around all of our waist, and we had a padlock, and we padlocked and chain linked ourselves to the opening of the Marine Corps place. At that time was the draft, those of you who are old enough to remember, and what you would get from the draft, what the young men would get, because only men that would get the draft notices, it would say, especially those that were finishing high school and not going on to college, June, I'm just using a date, June 12th at 6 o'clock, this is where you're supposed to be. If they didn't pick a service, then a service would be picked for them. So we had 3 young boys who had already signed up for the Marine Corps, and we didn't want them to go. So that's why we were there. And it was interesting because my parents they're both dead now. They were relatively conservative in their political thinking. They were good socialists in other ways of thinking. Anyway, that was my first arrest. And I jumped into it with both feet. Once I got a taste of what that was like to protest against something that I thought was evil, and I did absolutely believe that going to Vietnam was evil. I had already done enough of my work, going all the way back to 1955, when Eisenhower was first started giving money and aid to the French in Vietnam. So I knew all that history when I did that at 17. And so from a very early age, I knew that this country had done, I already knew that they had done some incredibly terrible things, what they had done to the blacks and what they have done to all of our indigenous folks and what they continue to do. So I never stopped. That's all I can say is 17 was my beginning. So I go to Indianapolis, and I finished my high school in Indianapolis. And of course, the war was going on then, and I was involved in other protests as a teenager. Went to college. First thing I did in college was go to a protest about Vietnam. I can't remember when was I got arrested, I know, a couple times in my freshman year. I've been arrested altogether 14 times for civil disobedience all through my years. Um, anyway, I don't know if that's relevant. That's really not what's relevant.
Well, it is. It does give us a real good, clear picture of the kind of commitment that it takes, depending on how you're choosing to protest. And in some cases, you really do have to engage in civil disobedience.
Absolutely. There's and not
Yes.
in some, I think in most cases, and in fact, I would say now, what we're doing now, we had all better be out. Like I said, how can you not be in the streets? That's what I just came back from a meeting that I was at, a training that I was at, and we're coming up with where what we're going to do next. It was nice and cute and sweet yesterday to be in a car and everybody has the nice signs and everybody's honking their horns. That's not going to get us anywhere. I'm glad that there were over 5 million people across the nation. We need to do some very serious protesting. We can't just do these cutesy things because that's what I call them. Going down to Tesla on a Saturday, and I've done it. I've been to Tesla on a Saturday and had my signs in front of Tesla. It's not moving the ball point. We need to do some very serious work. Very serious work, very similar to what MLK did, very similar to what Mahatma Gandhi did. Putting our lives on the line because that's what it's going to take. It is going to take us putting our lives on the line. We can't just sit on a corner with a sign. That's not going to change what's going on in DC. So that's where, in my opinion, where we need to be headed. If we truly, and I'm sorry, you're not going to want to hear this, Cecilia. I don't think elections are going to do it because the people who are running are not the people who are going to make the change. Unless we get new blood. We need all new blood. All the old people need to go. My generation needs to get the hell out of Washington, D.C. My generation, we're done. We need new blood. And you were saying that about the new generation. I'm around a lot of the U of A students. I was there. Do you remember not this April of 2024, the encampments that we had at the U of A? I was there for those two encampments. I helped out with those encampments. And I saw what the police were doing. Those students, I'm still good friends with. Those students are still with me when we go to protests. There is a group, just so you know, and it's getting larger and larger, of those generations who want change. They're not going, though, to, this is what you're not going to want to hear. They don't think change is going to come through elections. That's not what they think change is going to come through. They don't trust. They do not trust the Democratic Party. They absolutely don't trust the Republican Party. They think there needs to be a different new party.
The Democrats are still voting with the Republicans in the Senate when it's unnecessary.
I know, absolutely.
And
so that's like
they should be sending a message, not participating in any way whatsoever.
So let me step in here as the historian and political analyst. What we're talking about fundamentally is moving from mainstream politics to revolutionary politics.
Yep, absolutely.
Where mainstream politics is based on institutions, revolutionary politics derives from radical activists and sustained activism. And the people who are part of mainstream politics, they appeal to the moderates and the bystanders out there who constitute the majority of society. Revolutionary politics requires the activism of about the 5 or 10% of the population that is radical activists, like you, Rolande, who have radical ideologies and they have the ability to sustain anger, moral outrage over years, decades at a time. So what we're trying to figure out here is how does a person who is a moderate or bystander make the transition to revolutionary politics?
And my answer to that is something has to happen to them personally, because that's what I see. When I see people coming out in the streets now, The people who are coming out on the streets now and who are absolutely angered, it's because it's their aunt, their uncle, something has happened within their own personal family. It has affected them personally. That's what's bringing them out on the streets. That's why they're coming. And so that would be my answer to you now. Those moderates, those people who may have voted for Trump for whatever stupid reason, eggs prices or some bullshit thing that they talk about, had a sort of kind of awakening. They don't like to hear that, oh, they came and took a 3-year-old who had cancer and sent her to a country that she's never been to. Oh, they took a 10-year-old and she's in front of immigration court without any person to defend her and she can't speak the language. They're learning all these stories. These things have been going on for a very long time. Remember, what was Obama called? Does everybody remember what he was called about immigration?
No.
What was it? What did
He
they
was
call
considered the oh my God, the word just went out of my head. The when you kick people out, it went right out of my head, out of the country. He had deportation. He was the deportation in chief because he deported more people than anything Trump has done, anything either of the two Bushes had done, anything that the Clintons had done. People aren't aware of that. Look at your statistics. You will see that Obama deported. That's it. The deporter in chief. That was what he was called. He deported more people. He did it slyly and quietly. He didn't do it the way Trump is doing it. That's how he got away with it. But he was called the deporter in chief by many immigration folks. If you talk to immigration folks here in Tucson or anywhere, they will tell you that he had more numbers than any of the other presidents since the 1980s. I bet you guys didn't know that.
I knew that.
Okay.
Very, very disappointing about Obama. I didn't.
Yeah, I did know his numbers were high. I didn't know that he was setting records necessarily.
Yeah.
He set records.
Yeah.
And
Anyway,
then he did the whole thing with the drones. But anyway.
so I'd like to say something about the Democratic Party right now.
Go ahead.
I feel it is important to do the radical politics. I certainly agree with that. I approve of that, and I certainly would want to participate in that. But I think that we have to go a level higher. I am still convinced that if we could get a direct line to the people who are running the Democratic Party, I don't understand how the Democratic Party doesn't get it that there are so many of us at the bottom of the party that want the party to change. And for some reason, the thinking machine of the party just isn't thinking. I don't know.
Yes, they are. They're just thinking differently than you and I. What they're thinking is about money. Look what they did to David Hogg. David Hogg got to be co-chair of the DNC. I've met David Hogg a couple times, actually. He's a really great guy. And I really hoped when I heard that he was going to be co-chair, I was really happy. I thought that was going to help change. So what does he do? He comes in, he tries to make a change. And in that change, he says that he was going to primary out the old folks who weren't making change. So what did they do? They voted him out. The DNC, it's about money. It's about the donors that they have. They don't want to upset the donors. And it's also about AIPAC. AIPAC has a stronghold, not just on the Republicans, a stronghold on the Democrats. Until we can break AIPAC and break their back and get them out of our politics and get Israel out of everything that we do, we are not going to be able to go forward with the Democratic or the Republican Party. They have such a stronghold on what the Democrat, and you were talking, John, about why the Democratic senators are voting the way they vote. They vote the way they vote because they're getting money from AIPAC. Every person, if you go to your vote, because I follow the APAC folks quite a bit. If you go to
Yeah, I
everyone
don't
who
like those
voted,
guys.
if you go to every one of the senators who voted to allow those who got in for administration, for example, Marco Rubio, he got 99 senators voted for that son of a bitch. They knew who he was. They knew who he was. And they voted for him anyway. It's just, anyway, I'll get off my
Okay,
soapbox.
No, it's okay.
I want to
it helps.
redirect us because I do not want to get into a rabbit hole of discussions of politics. I want to get into a discussion of how you sustain your anger and moral outrage as you go out there and engage in protests.
I just gave you a whole
Well,
bunch of examples. I just gave a bunch of examples.
Well, let me distill out what I think I got from what you were saying is that number one, it's going to have to be personal in some way.
Yes.
That's sustaining. And number two, when you see people gain advantage, like Rubio, that is so harmful to so many other people, um, it's like just like chaining yourself up at 17. You're trying to save 3 lives. No matter how many times you contemplate that, the emotional charge associated with that action is not going to change. And so, I mean, that's what I'm hearing from you is that it's personal, and those things that move you to action are those things that cannot be ignored, and that do drive action.
I have probably 3 female friends, 4, make that 4, 4 female friends that I get to debrief with. I debrief. And during my debriefings, I do a little bit of ranting, a little bit of agreeing, and a little bit of 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 um, uh, deeper than discussion. We go in when depending on who I'm debriefing with. Sometimes we go into aha moments, explanations or information that I didn't have before that helps me to understand something I wasn't getting. So anyway, bottom line is I debrief with about 4 different friends, female, all of them female, and all of them highly well informed.
So, Roland, you have been politically active since you were 17. Now you're in your 60s. You're retired.
No, I'm in my 70s, dear. I'm
70s,
73.
okay. All right, so that's 50 straight years, 60 straight years of political activism based on moral outrage, sustained anger. How do you do that?
What did I tell you earlier? How can you not? How can
Okay,
you not?
I
That's my
agree.
answer
How
to you.
can you not?
I don't know how people can just say, "Oh, I'm not going to do that anymore."
But
I
the
don't
question is,
know how to close that door.
how do you avoid getting exhausted physically and emotionally from that?
You don't. You're still
You don't.
always exhausted.
Yeah, that's right.
You're always
It's
exhausted. You're always thinking about it. You're always
that
you can put the rage on the shelf for a minute and attend to other things, but then when you think about that, the rage comes right back.
even when I'm doing, okay, so here's an example. I had no underwear the other day because I was out doing protest. And so I took that morning because there was no protest in the morning, there was one in the afternoon. And even while I was doing my laundry, I was still in my head thinking about how pissed off I am. But I'm still doing the laundry because I have to have clean clothes. You know what I mean? And
Exactly.
I will say this to you, what I have hurt when I look back on all those years are my children. I think sometimes I think I didn't give my children what they needed to have, because I was so involved in trying to make changes here and there. I thought I was a pretty good mom, but looking back on it, having no other children or grandchildren, and now I have great grandchildren who have jumped in like I have. I don't have anyone who has jumped in with as much um, passion about politics as I. I think I scared them away. I seriously do. They all
So,
vote. That's the one thing they all do. They all vote. They're all very progressive in their thinking. So that I passed on to them. But getting involved on the streets, they want no part of it.
so it sounds like you've made a sacrifice in your life. Where on the one hand, you've had you've established professional credentials, you've had a profession, but on the other hand, you sacrifice some sort of family harmony in order to be
Yep.
more politically active.
Yes, I would say that's absolutely true. And I had my own profession as a teacher. I never gave
Yeah.
up teaching. So I taught at the same time and many of the things that I did in my classroom had to do with politics. I was always political
I
in the
have to
classroom.
excuse myself for a moment. I've got a
Yep,
call coming in from Germany.
sure.
So go ahead, Roland.
Alicia.
That's it. That's all I said what I was going to say. But yeah,
Estoy participando en un
go ahead.
Zoom.
So, like Roland, we've talked about in
Participando
the
en
past
un
sort of the history of your activism, and
Dame un minuto, dame un minuto.
it seems Roland like you center your activism around outrage against American policies, whether it's domestic American policies or American foreign policies. Is that
Right.
correct?
Yes, that's absolutely correct.
But it does not extend to international hotspots that have no connection to American policy. Like you don't get involved in Chinese affairs or African affairs or
Well,
Russian affairs.
that's not true but then you asked me that earlier, and it all interacts with the United States. Chinese affairs interacts with the United States, absolutely. So does what happened in South Africa. So what happened in Rwanda, what's happening right now, those 4 countries that are coming together. Do you know about that? I just read about that today. The 4 African countries who have decided they're going to become one larger country. They've already put in a constitution together. Oh my God, I'll find out. I'll look it up while we're talking. Um, so yeah, but the United States of America, are constantly involved in everything that goes on in the world. We
Yeah.
really are.
Yeah, I mean,
So
well, we've been one of the world superpowers for 75 straight years.
that's
It
right.
makes sense. But simultaneously, it's like, see, you've told me you've only gone to one Free Tibet rally.
Well, that I can remember. I said that I could remember.
So you probably have gone to others, but you don't really get involved in protesting Chinese policy towards, say, Taiwan or like, were you at all protesting the Chinese crackdown in Tiananmen Square in 1989?
Oh yes, I was involved in that.
Okay,
Hold on a second.
sure.
It's called the East African Federation. It's Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, and Rwanda, Burundi, and South Sudan. They want
Okay,
to call themselves the
that's a
East.
large chunk of territory right there.
I know, but I'm just letting you know that's what they're trying to do. There's 4 specific African countries currently merging into a single country. The East African Community would be the name of it. That's their aim. The ultimate goal is called themselves East African Federation. And right now, Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania are the main proponents. And then they want to include Rwanda, Burundi, and South Sudan. Anyway, I don't know what made me tell you about that, but I knew that that's what I had read today.
So you're
That's
you're
just one.
obviously pretty aware of what's happening around the world.
Absolutely.
What elements, like, do you stop your protests at American influence in a given region, or do you send your activism toward all parts of the world where there's a human rights issue?
Mhm. I don't know if I can say the word all. Many. I would use the word many probably
Many.
that human
Okay.
rights issues because I can't say all because I'm not that good. So like right now, one of my main protests that I'm doing has to do with Palestine and Gaza. Excuse me. And the West.
Oh, could you put your camera on again? Hello? Hello? Anybody there?
I'm back. I'm back. Hello.
Okay.
What happened? I'm sorry I had to run out for a minute, but I'm back.
Okay.
Is Roland? I don't see Roland.
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened to her. Hold on a second.
Whatever happened to John? Oh, there she is. There's Roland. Roland is back.
Roland, yeah. Thank you for
Roland.
being back.
Roland. Sorry.
So Roland, you said that your activism extends to most areas of the world, but not all.
Oh, we lost her.
Okay. So Cecilia, let's turn to you for a moment. Um, so how have you sustained your activism over the years? And despite being exhausted, as you admit.
Well, I have probably three female friends, four, make that four, four female friends that I get to debrief with. I debrief.
Debrief. Okay.
I debrief. And during my debriefings, I do a little bit of ranting, a little bit of agreeing, and a little bit of 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 uh, deeper than discussion. We go in, depending on who I'm debriefing with. Sometimes we go into aha moments, explanations or information that I didn't have before that helps me to understand something I wasn't getting. Um, so anyway, bottom line is I debrief with about four different friends, female, all of them female, and all of them highly well informed.
Okay. And that debriefing serves to educate everyone and to provide for emotional recalibration.
Okay, recalibration. I don't know about educating, but yes,
Mhm.
definitely recalibrating and kind of getting back on track with where I was thinking, but getting a fresh perspective.
Okay. Where did you find these friends?
Lifelong. They're just lifelong friends.
Okay. So you communicate every month, every week? How
Uh,
frequently?
well, one of them at least once a week, one of them at least twice a month, one of them almost daily, either daily or every other day, and the other one is also weekly.
Okay, so you have enough frequency to help uh provide some perspective on your activities.
Correct.
Okay, good. So Roland, can you hear me?
Yep, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Good. I don't know what
Excellent.
happened, but
Roland,
So Roland, I want to
are,
answer
are,
your
are you in
question.
yeah, Roland, are you sitting in a rocking chair?
no, here's what happened. I had to go. I don't know if you were hearing my dog. My dog was barking to go out, and she won't go out unless I go out with her. So I'm walking is what I'm doing with my phone. That's probably what made you think I was moving around. I apologize. I'm
No
seated
problem.
now.
So
Okay.
Roland, I think I can answer your question now about how can you not get involved.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so like I've talked with a number of concerned people in my family and also classmates from college and graduate school. And I think there are two or three main responses of why not get involved. Um, one is too emotionally exhausting to get involved. So there's a lot of self-preservation work going on. Um, two, people have professional commitments and family commitments, so they're not willing to make the necessary personal sacrifices that you've made to become politically active. Um, and then three, I think there is also an analytical perspective that I learned about in graduate school. Because I met a bunch of people, a bunch of scholars who were part of what's called the New Political Science movement back in the 60s, like Cornell West and Francis Fox Piven, who's at the Graduate Center. And from what I can tell, there are they have two labels, scholar and activist. And to become a scholar is nice because you can study social activism, you study revolutionary politics, but not really get directly involved in it. To be an activist is also nice because you can be directly involved in making change. So
Are you
ideally, you want to
saying,
connect them.
You need to be both. You can't be one or the other. You need to be both. You
yeah,
need to
I
know
mean,
what the hell you're doing,
they're
and you
not
need to
mute
be an activist. You
exactly,
need to know what the hell's, I'm sorry, go ahead, Cecilia.
they're not mutually exclusive.
That's right, exactly. I
Well,
think,
actually, the intellectual principle is they are mutually exclusive.
no,
That
I
that you
disagree with
you
that.
cannot be both a scholar and an activist
Why?
I
because if you're an
disagree.
activist, you have so much bias you can't be a neutral analytical scholar.
You don't have to be neutral. You don't have to be neutral when it's outrage. There's no such thing as being neutral when there's outrage. This is that bullshit that I'm so sick of hearing about both sides. There are no fucking both sides. They're not, that doesn't exist, especially right now. There are no both sides to ICE stealing people off the streets. There's no both sides. You
The other,
cannot,
this,
you just cannot.
there's right and there's evil. Those are the
Right.
two sides right now. It's right, it's what's right and what's evil. There are
And
no
it,
two
and
equal
it's
sides.
and it's not just now. We can go back to the 1930s. We can go back to the 1950s. We can go back to the 1850s, right after
Yeah,
the end of slavery. There, it you can I absolutely believe that I can be educated in the issues in which I'm out there on the streets. I don't just go out in the streets and say, oh, I think I'm going to whatever the fuck. I don't know. I can't think of something right now and not know it. When I'm out there in the streets about Palestine, I know about Palestine. I know the history going all the way back to 1948. I know about what happened in 1967, what happened in 1972, what happened, and I can go all the way through to right now where we're at today in 2025. How can you get in the streets and not know what your issue is and
Correct.
not know it well? You can't
Exactly.
just sort of know it. You have to know it well. That's the scholarly part. And being an activist, Cornell West, I would absolutely call him a scholar and an activist. Absolutely both. Jane Fonda, another one, very scholarly on climate change and very much an activist. I've met Jane Fonda. She was just here not very long ago. She's very scholarly on what she's talking about. The people that I have met, Medea Benjamin, the one I told you guys to look up for Code Pink, another scholar and another activist for many, many, many years.
I would like to meet Jane Fonda if you can ever make that happen. I love that
Okay.
woman.
She was just here not very long ago. It was like April.
I
I'm
love her.
sorry. If she comes back, I'll let you know. She came to Borderlinks. You ever been to Borderlinks?
No. Borderlands or Border Link?
Borderlinks.
No,
Borderlinks, it's
no.
called. We have to get together, Cecilia. Well, I'll connect you with some folks if you want to be active. That's all.
Yeah,
Borderlinks deals with the desert and people dying in the desert.
Oh, I have heard of them. That's right.
I'll connect both of you after this meeting's over, which should be in a few minutes.
Okay.
So I just want to defend the intellectual separation of scholar and activist, because even though you're right that you need to know the issue in order to be active in it, um, the priority for a scholar is a contribution to literature. And
Says who?
activist,
Well, wait a
what?
minute. What
Says
about
who?
Cesar Chavez?
Yeah.
Yeah, what
Yeah.
about
What about Cesar?
yeah, look how many contributions he's made to a lot of literature, a lot of information, a lot of the books that have been written for and about him. No, no, no. The scholar,
Yeah,
people
I
can
do.
contribute to scholarly intellectual products, whether they're on the ground or not.
So let me ask you this, Mariah, because I know we're both of us don't agree with you. So are you saying to me that you cannot be a scholar and have a point of view? That's what you're saying.
I'm presenting a viewpoint. That's all. It's not one that I own.
No, I'm just saying, that's what I'm asking. In your estimation or in your definition of scholar for you, a scholar cannot have an opinion. They can only like just have studied the case and there is no opinion made. Whenever I read a story, I don't give a shit. When I read a story, when I read a newspaper article, by the time I'm done with it, I've got an opinion.
Yeah, me too.
There's an opinion made. How do you, I can read a scholarly article, absolutely a scholarly article. When I'm done with it, I absolutely have an opinion. I'm not just saying, I, I don't know, but is that what you're saying? I asked you a question. So you're saying that to be scholarly, you cannot have an opinion. You just write the facts. Just the
I'm
facts.
saying that to be scholarly, there is uh, analytic distance that's required and a suspension of moral judgments.
Mm.
Because if you do have those moral judgments, those judgments will prevent you from seeing all the facts.
What
Okay,
about Martin
Noam
Luther
Chomsky. Do you
King?
know who Noam Chomsky is?
Yes,
Here's another one. Okay, would you call him scholarly?
in linguistics, yes. Everywhere else,
Only in
no.
linguistics? Only in linguistics.
Yes.
Oh my goodness, no.
I do not
Absolutely,
consider
that
him to
man is
be a legitimate
scholarly on.
scholar in any other fields.
What about Martin Luther King, Malcolm X? What about these? They all have very scholarly opinion, not just
Well,
opinion,
education, scholarly education, and they ended up with an opinion.
but
Yes.
beyond that, they also have scholarly works. They left
Yes,
behind work.
absolutely.
Printed
Mahatma Gandhi, another scholar.
another
You're
one.
not going to tell. Are you going to tell me that Mahatma Gandhi, who was very scholarly, who knew exactly what he was doing, you're going to say that he, the activist who actually started this whole nonviolence that we now continue to use all these years later, 100, actually it's 100, he started in 1906. That was his first protest in South Africa, was 1906.
Global movement. He started a global movement.
In
Okay, so
1906.
let me
Anyway,
give you a hypothetical.
okay.
Take a well-known scholar, a mathematician, like Benoit Mendelbrot, who created the Mendelbrot set. Would you trust him to be an activist in politics against, say, apartheid?
Absolutely, if he knew what he was talking about. What the hell? Do you know how many people that are on the streets with me who are mathematicians, who are engineers, who are doctors, lawyers? Who else is on the streets with me? Teachers. I have a lot of teachers on the streets with me. I have lots of doctors on the streets with me. I have lots of nurses on the streets with
Yes.
me.
So I have no objection to people with training in a field like engineering or medicine going with their larger humanity and entering the streets to protest something. That's fine. What I do have a problem with is someone who is trained in one field, like linguistics, and then trying to apply that to a political situation where it doesn't belong.
It absolutely does belong. Have you read Norm's stuff, Norm Chomsky's books?
I'm very
Before and
familiar with
after.
them, yes, but
I studied Norm Chomsky when I went to become a teacher. That's who we studied, was Norm Chomsky when it came to linguistics. And at the same time I was studying him about linguistics, I was also reading his political books. He's not much for this world right now. He's living in Brazil with his wife. He can barely speak at this point in time, which is really sad. It breaks my heart that he can, because he's only writing now and he has to use a computer to write. But this man is a genius, absolute genius, and he's a genius on more than one level, more than just as a linguistic.
okay. Well, I will definitely consider him then. Thank you.
So
You're
what's
welcome.
the point? What's the point of all this?
The point of this conversation or talking about scholarly and activism?
Right, the latter.
Okay, so the point is within academia, there is usually a barrier between the intellectual part and the activist part. I personally want to break that barrier down. I don't think it should exist. But I do have to give at
You're
least
proving
lip
our
service
point,
to it.
Mariah.
What?
Right, you just proved our point. What you say you want to break down, and you just proved our point that you can be a scholarly,
Yes,
and you
exactly.
can be an activist. Absolutely. So you proved our point,
Yes, I did. But I
right,
have to give at
Cecilia?
least
See, that's one on our side, Cecilia.
All right,
Mark
chalk
a
one up.
plus.
Chalk one
yes,
up to us.
but I have to give at least lip service to the arguments on the other side.
No, I just told you there are no other sides. God damn it. We are in a situation where there are no other sides. They're not. They
The
don't
other
exist.
side is the evil. The other side is the evil. That's it. There are no
Okay.
Can we
equal
use another
sides.
word? Because evil always connotates religion. And I have a problem with, for me, it's not that I'm against religion. I'm not. I think we need to use words. I don't know what the right word is though, Cecilia. I don't have a better word than evil, because it is evil. Yet, here's the thing. When we say the word evil, so those 79 million who voted for him, I know they're wrong, and I know they're racist, and I know they're many things. Um,
79, if we agree on that, that means 79 million people of the 300 and what is it, 325 million that we have in this country? 325 or 310? I think it's 310 people in this country. 79 million of them are evil. That's pretty
Yes.
scary.
That's a scary number, but
It's scary, but that's what it is.
But those people
79
supported
million
slavery
of
and the
them
Civil
are-
War were also evil.
79 million of them are largely ignorant.
Yeah.
And evil sometimes, I think.
Yes, not to mention
Okay.
the evil part, but the ones who are not necessarily evil are just ignorant.
They're also racist. I
Yeah.
finally, they absolutely are racist. They
Yes.
absolutely are, like, I don't know what hole they crawled out of, that they think it's okay to pick people up off the streets. And they say it. I was just before this Zoom, I was on, I can't remember if it was Facebook or Instagram. I don't remember quite. So I'm reading a story. I think it was Facebook. And then I always look at the comments. I am always just appalled at the amount of people that are defending Trump. They continue to defend Trump. I'm just
too.
appalled.
You and I, me too. I cannot
I
believe.
agree. So
how
both of
many-
you, we need to stop because we're almost out of time in
Okay.
terms of the Zoom call. And what we're getting into is a larger discussion of how to deal with our neighbors and fellow citizens with all this stuff. But
And
I
some of
think
us are relatives. Some of us, it's our relatives.
yes. So
Yeah, right.
I want to thank both of you for being on this call because I think both of you have contributed a lot to the message that we're trying to send out of how to maintain your stamina as you go out and protest. That's the important thing here. So thank you both for contributing to that lesson.
I was great to meet you, Cecilia. I hope we meet each other in person someday.
I'm looking forward to it, Roland. I'm
You
looking
take
forward
care,
to
and
meeting.
Mariah, thanks for getting us together.
You're
And I
welcome.
appreciate having this Zoom.
Thank you. Have
We
a
need
good
to have
night.
more of these kind of, you too, everybody else. Stay safe out there on the streets.
Yes, stay safe. Bye.
Adios.